Salam once again, and welcome back to our journey of the Makian Gospel history in Africa and the African Christianity in the making. Now, we said that we are going to look at the African Christianity from the Ecumenical Council's lens. And one thing I'll have to mention is, since Africans could not raise a bishop in Alexandria, the dominant Christianity in Alexandria became the Greco-Roman kind of Christianity. Though we will be told that the Maghreb was Catholic and Alexandria was Orthodox. These are later identities. But back then, in this period that we are interrogating, there was nothing like Catholic and Orthodox. In fact, there were very many formations, and they were coming out of thought theologies, contextual lived theologies, and not really from an organizational analytical theology that probably led to the Roman Catholicism and Orthodoxy. There was nothing of this sort. And that's why I'm not even talking about the Coptic Orthodox Church, because it never existed in this period of our interest. And so the first ecumenical, it is called ecumenical because it is good that these Christians during this time had realized that the whole universe is a household of God, and the mission of Christ was to bring everybody who believes on board, regardless of where they come from, regardless of their color, race, culture. And for the first time, the church got everything right. And so, in doing right, they also did wrong. One, the emperor became the host of the bishops in these ecumenical councils, and the organizer and the convener, for that matter. So in 325, they convened a meeting in Nicaea or Nicaea, which is in Turkey. And I want you to understand the distance from Egypt to Turkey. I don't know how much that costed, but I'm sure it was quite a lot, because it was quite a voyage. And so this is where people discussed about the Trinity, and an African man called Athanasius was led by the Holy Spirit, and he was able to really explain that meaning, because there was fear that these ideas were coming from the Greco-Roman religion of the polytheism. And so textual proofs were done through the Old Testament and the New Testament, and so on and so forth, before even the formulation of the theology. And another thing that they did, they also talked about Easter. And the main thing they talked about was trying to move away from the Passover, because there was confusion, like it is even today. The Last Supper is not part of the Passover. It was done on a Thursday, or probably a Wednesday evening, because Jesus was arrested around Thursday, yes. So it was done in Wednesday, on a Wednesday evening, or probably even Tuesday. The days are not really well put by the four Gospels if you interrogate the time. And so Passover was to happen on Saturday. On Friday, there was the Feast of the Unleavened Bread, or something of that sort. And so the Easter, which we celebrate and we are in this period, was on Sunday, because this is the proclamation of the resurrected Lord. And so let us not confuse all these three. And as it were, it was decided that there should be a departure from this period. Well, later, some leaders decided that we cannot really depart from so much, but we have also to look at the moon. And so it happened that Easter was set, but it had to come after Passover. So yesterday was Passover. Yesterday was on a Friday. So today is the Western Rite European Christianity Easter Sunday. It is today. And like I said, today again is the Palm Sunday for the Eastern Rite European tradition. And so the difference occurred because, and it is a later difference, because the Easter was very close to Passover. So there was need for that departure. So the Eastern Church decided to celebrate the Pascha during the equinox, when the day and night, or days and nights, are equal. These are 12-hour day and 12-hour night. And so they moved from there, and the creed was formulated partly, and it was completed in a later meeting at around 341 AD. Now, this is where the idea, like I was saying, personal theologies and lived theologies from the periphery and from Africans started coming up very strongly. Now the school has been left to the multicultural guys in Alexandria. And so the idea of heresy came up, and most of the African thinking around Christianity were condemned. We are not going to go into that because they are quite numerous. One thing, like I said, the African churches were pushed into periphery. So they were the rich farmers in Alexandria who were Africans, and other people who benefited from the multiculturalism and this new dispensation, which in fact is similar to colonialism. And I dare say it was colonialism because all these Europeans who came to Alexandria did not consult Africans to come to their lands. They never paid any visa. They never went through any protocol of the immigration. So they invaded because they could. There was no law of human interaction and engagement between the natives and those who were visiting It was just an illegal expansion. And so it was expected that the new Platonic philosophy will be used. And something else I want you to realize is that Africans are monists. We do not see the world or view the world in doubles or in twos, like the real world and a shadow world. For us, everything exists in oneness. So it is about unity of all. For example, I'll give you a worldview of the Maasai's. The Maasai's worldview includes the departed and the unborn. God at the center. Spirits are there. There is man and his belongings. His belongings include his wives and children. So this is the worldview of an African. And so in theologizing or in analyzing the interaction of faith between man to God, or interactions between man and God, they can only analyze it from a monistic point of view. And unfortunately, this played out in the councils because they were European dominated. And again, it was a costly venture because, again, the second one was held in Constantinople. And so there were issues of Africans raising their own bishop. Now, after the Second Ecumenical Council, according to the Universal Church narrative, the false teachings began to raise. But unfortunately, these churches were stuffed of money, and they started depending on rich guys from their own communities. And one of the rich guys who had been ordained by that time in the early 300 AD, was Arius. And Arius was paying the stipends of other men of God. He was promoting printing of books. And so, being a very important person, he had the human limitedness of being entitled. And so he formulated, and he was educated, so he was able to interrogate these new Platonic ideas into Christianity. Unfortunately, his ideas never carried the day because he was an African. For me, they were genuine questions which did not merit his condemnation. After all, the apostolic succession brought to Africa by Mark was not a European right. And so this is where I fault all the negativity that befell Africans in the early days of Christianity. And so they went to Ephesus, at least this is out of the Constantinople, but not very far anyway. And so this is where the theology or Mariology, the theology of Mary, was developed. And so there were issues of Mary. Why should she be called a mother of God and not the mother of Jesus or the mother of Christ? And so these were valid questions, like I say. And so a lot of people were called heretics, were banished from the church because of asking these questions. And that's why I say the church can never be apologetic of ignoring democracy. And the church cannot claim to be part of democracy, while democracy is older than the church, and the church never thought of anything like democracy. I will say democracy has really helped Christianity more than the church dogmas and the church council's decisions have helped Christianity. Though I'm not against them, but I am looking at them critically and I'm giving an opinion. The ramification of my opinions is a secondary concern to me. But my concern is the African Christianity, the suppression of the African Christianity that never began today. And it has been a narrative and an agenda since Africa was discovered by our foreign brothers and sisters. It has always given them sleepless nights. And that's why the negativity about Africa, since this time until today, it has never changed. It is very rare for us to hear great things in the multinational media about Africa. It's only that now, through democracy, Africans are even featuring in TED shows, and they are giving their own stories, their own successes, their own perspective. It is fortunate that Christianity and colonization, which are connected, never went as far as destroying completely what is Africa. What is African was maintained in our songs, in our poetry, and in our history that has been handed down through our grandparents to date. We have sayings of the wise, the sages. We have proverbs, African proverbs that still exist. And we have the African language that still exists. These were the preservation of the Africans, and still they are. Unfortunately, somebody like me, I don't know my mother tongue because I was raised in the city. And so I can imagine in Alexandria, most Copts who were raised in the city probably never spoke their native languages. And so they never saw or viewed life from that perspective. And so it is unfortunate that I represent that type of an African. But then again, it is fortunate because we are all here and we are able to have a hindsight and look back and seek for what is better and greater than what was good back then. So remember your roots, remember who you are, remember your purpose, and remember your destiny. And in all that, we shall overcome. Much blessing.